This video is entitled The Modern Day Crimes of Modern Day Israel. Now, more specifically, the modern day crimes and the modern day errors of the Israeli government. Let's start off by saying I'm not anti-Semitic. And although many of the things I'm going to say in this video will be misconstrued as anti-Semite, I'm going to go through the painstaking stuff to say in the beginning to keep that from happening and from taking root. First off, the modern viewpoint as the collective of Jews who live in modern day Israel is no longer being represented by the bully Israeli government. There are protests almost daily from Jews that are afraid that their government, the modern day Israeli government, and when I say Jews, I'm talking about Israeli Jews. And there's different kinds of Jews all over the world, and this is not a shot at any of you guys. I know plenty of you are saying the similar things that I'm saying here, although I myself am not a Jew. I'm not a Jew, I'm not a Muslim, I'm not a Christian. I don't have anything to do with any Christianity or its various different confused doctrines or different types of denominations. The same goes for Islam. I'm not part of Islam. And let me go back a step further before I offend any of you Arabs, which is not what I want to do, or any of you Bedouins, because I'm actually on your side. Although I'm not part of Islam, I'll explain to you why in the beginning of this video why I'm not Islam. First of all, to the Arabs and the Bedouins, your bloodline is the one who inherits the glorious land, the Negev desert that stretches all the way down from the northern tip of Israel all the way down to the northern tip of Ethiopia, to the west towards the land of the eastern kings, and towards the east out to the ocean where the great vortex is and the caverns beneath, just past Yemen into the ocean. So I want to take a second out to talk to you Arabs and to you modern day sons of Abraham, the natives of the Middle East. The Bedouins, you, and the Arabs, you, are the modern day sons of Abraham. Unfortunately for Isaac and Israel, because of a lot of confusion and wrong living and errors, the original Israel was destroyed a long time ago. They were cast out as slaves and shipped to every land where they were abused as whores. The male and female children were raped, some places ritually, sexually, made servants. It has continued unto this day and time in religions that do not teach the truth of the foundations and the truth of the occult, the occultish type practices that happen inside the religions, to the people who they bring in as new converts. This happens a lot of times in Christianity. It happens a lot of times in Judaism. And Islam, I'll tell you, was invented. Do you understand? Islam was a religion that was invented after the times of your forefather Abraham and after the times of your great forefather Ishmael. Ishmael was not a Muslim. Ishmael was not a Muslim at all. Ishmael was not anything to do with Islam. Abraham was not anything to do with Islam. Listen to me, my friends. I want you to understand. Isaac was not anything to do with what is modern Judaism or Christianity. Now, to you modern Muslims, this is not to offend you. I want to explain something to you about religion. Religion has failed humanity. Failed. Now I'll explain to you something. Islam was invented because foreign Greek and Roman Greco rulers, invaders, foreigners, came into your lands, the lands of the Arab and the Bedouin. And what was left of the northern tribes of the Hebrews that remained there. They came into your land and tried to steal it from you, and did steal it from you for a while. So Islam was invented to keep the land from being stolen from the Arabs and the Bedouins, and also from being stolen from the northern tribes that remained there over through the times, back to the time when the first pig's head was cut off and drained, along with its entrails sliced as its belly was cut open, and its waste and blood ran over the Jew altar for the Jew temple. So I'll tell you that Islam was invented in order to keep peace and security in a land where there was, one, a foreign invader who was of Greek Greco-Roman descent. Two, between a modernized Jew during that time who had made a whole lot of changes to the religion by adopting Greco-Roman and other foreign ideals of Hellenism and Greek paganism into its religious form. Now, there was no Muslim and no Islam before that. Back to the time of Abraham, the law was Moses. After Abraham, the law was Moses. Before Moses, Abraham's law was Abraham's God, the Spirit God. So I'm going to tell you, what has Islam done to stop the Bedouin and the Arabs from losing their home? Many Bedouin who are Muslims, from losing their homes to a bully nation that is out of place, is pushing. What has Islam done to stop those children, those Bedouin Muslim children, from being ran over by bulldozers, Israeli bulldozers that crushed little babies while they're still suckling from their mother's breasts? Islam did not save those Bedouins from being ran off their land. And I say this respectfully. Islam did not save those Arabs and Bedouins and the mixture that took place between those peoples from their land. They've been here in the modern United States. The Indians that were the originals here, they at least got reservations when they got ran off of their land by similar peoples. But there in the Middle East, the Bedouin doesn't even have a reservation. They put the Bedouin on top of a graveyard where they killed their families and made them live there. Tell me how that is justified. It's not justified. Now, I said that I was going to make this video about the crimes of modern day Israel, the crimes of the modern day Israeli government, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I wanted to lay the foundation to explain that I'm not of any religion. I'm not a Satanist. I'm not a Luciferian. I don't belong to the Masons. I'm not part of any sub-religion that exists here in the West or all over the world. I don't belong, and I'm not a part of the Illuminati. I will never be Islam. I will never be a Christian. I will never be a Jew. I will never be Buddhist or Hindu or any religion, because I don't believe in religions. I hate them. People have believed in religions and those teaching those things, and the religions have failed them because the religions are not the original teachings, not the original spiritual teachings to begin with, for the original people to begin with. Now I will tell you that Moses is the foundation of Islam. I'm not going to go any further to explain why I'm not a Muslim, while never be of Islam, of the religion Islam, of any of its type of Islam. Never. Now I'm going to tell you the crimes the Israeli government is guilty of, the modern day Israeli government, and why it is making its citizens, many of them Israelis, Jews, and other immigrants who have been brought in there, who are of a different type of Jew that have been brought in there, targets for the Muslim nations that are surrounding them. They have made themselves the enemies of you Muslims. They have done so through many different acts. The modern day Israeli government is a bully. It is an evil organization that remains of Greco-Roman kings from Rome who obliterated everything there, and the only tribes that remained to serve them and do their bidding, the northern tribes, mixed and intermingled with them and then became inserted into history as the original Hebrews, and they're not. They're not. There's no peace in the Middle East because there is a people there and a religion and a form of government that does not belong in the Middle East. There will never be peace in the Middle East as long as the modern day Israeli government exists. I've told you the truth. Now we'll talk about the modern day crimes of the modern day Israeli government. And this is not a shot at Israeli citizens. A lot of them, if they could tell what they think about their government, they'd have a bulldozer pushing over Yahoo's entire building and his entire staff while they're in there. There's plenty of Jews who are protesting against the government there. Israeli Jews. Jews from all over the world who've gone to protest against what he's doing right now. And I'm talking about the Northern King, the leader of Israeli governmental affairs. I'm talking about him, the modern day him. Now, when you look at it for what it is, maybe you find some truth in what I'm telling you about their crimes. The crimes all over the internet, all over the news. The modern day crimes of modern day Israeli government, all over the news. Now I'll tell you something. The Israeli government is guilty of genocide. They are guilty of ethnic cleansing. They are guilty of running Bedouins and Arabs. And I'm not advocating Islam. It had nothing to do with the Bedouins being Muslims, because Bedouins are Muslims, a lot of them modern day. Arabs are Muslims, a lot of them modern day. But the Israeli government is committing genocide and unlawful acts of ethnic cleansing against peaceful people that are living in tents in a desert, the same way Abraham did. Living as close to Abraham, you won't find hardly anybody other than the Arabs that live in the Negev desert and the Bedouins that live intermingled amongst them, that live more like Abraham on the face of the planet. Why are they being bulldozed off their territory? They are the blood descendants and the natives of that sand where they live, where their ancestors lived. So I'll tell you, Israel, modern day Israel, is not even Israel. It's not even Israel. It's a counterfeit Israel. The government, the Israeli government, is run by people who are the descendants of those same Greco-Roman people that sacrificed pigs on the altar of the original Hebrews that were there at the time, that were the northern Hebrews, the only ones that remained during that time. And then, to make matters even worse, the modern day Israeli government, they build their military facilities with all of its genetic experiment with Frankenstein-type experiments right there in the glorious sands. The glorious land of the nomad has now become polluted with evil Israeli government freak science projects buildings and a prison that was built to hold their brethren. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. Years ago, some of you may remember it, and I was a Christian for years. I'm not anymore. But let me explain to you how they fool the Christians here in the United States of America. They had us sending money in a project called Aliyah to bring Jews from all over the world that they could find the genetic, Y chromosome of what they consider and call to be a Jew from all these different lands, including down into the northern parts of Ethiopia, the black Jews, where they bring all these people into Israel. And what did they do? When they brought them there, they made slave factory workers out of most of them. They put a lot of the women that were pretty enough on the streets as prostitutes, and prostitutes to the Israeli government officials, and abused them so to the point that they complained. When they began complaining of the conditions, they drove their brethren right toward the south, down into the southern lands of the Negev desert, where a lot of them met with the Bedouins and the Arabs that lived there and were accepted. And then they gathered a crowd of protesters to come back up and protest what was being done to them and to the immigrants that were being imprisoned right within Jerusalem and abused through homosexual rapes from the guards, through the homosexual rapes that were happening right in the prisons, and the different prisoners that were going missing out of those prisons, ending up in the Negev freak genetic science project military facilities where they're doing God knows what and creating God knows what, splicing animal genes and human genes together and all this nonsense. So what the Israeli government did to combat the protesters was killed some of them, imprisoned some of the other ones, and when the prison in Jerusalem, when the Jerusalem prisons got too full, they went down into the Negev and built a prison right in the glorious sands, right next to all those freak government genetic science project buildings and military facilities that they have there above and below the grounds. They built a prison to hold the same immigrants that many Christians paid, because they're lied to have sent to Israel, modern day Israel, in the first place. So that's what's really going on over there with the Israeli government. They are guilty of crimes against people that have the very DNA running through their blood that they have. That's one crime they're guilty of. They're guilty of removing the natural natives from the Southlands that have nothing at all to do with their territory that they were given in 1963 or whatever time it was, when that foreign false Israel was put there by people blinded by religious nonsense and religious confusion. Now, what do you think about modern day Israel? Do you think that they have the Ark of the Covenant? That the God of the original Israelites is telling them through the Ark of the Covenant to go down there and carry out a 40, 50-day war on Gaza's children, babies, little girls and boys, young women, citizens of Gaza? That's who got killed during that war. They hardly even blew up one tank. They went and killed a bunch of citizens. So, on down into the Negev, they continue marching, stealing land. They've completely stolen Gaza. Gaza's, being assimilated into what I'll consider as the false modern Israeli government and its carnage and brutality, lies and bullying of the southern nations. So why is it being allowed by the world? I'll tell you why it's being allowed of the world. Because they're afraid of the Israeli Air Force. They are afraid of the Israeli army. The Israeli army made the bold statement to the UN that they basically don't give a Sam about any of it. What they're trying to do to investigate Israel and its modern leader for war crimes and its various different military commanders and leaders of government. They told the UN and the European nations that if you try to investigate us, we'll dismantle your entire courts. So what is this attitude that modern day Israeli government's taking? Now what they want to make you think with their alliances with the Western world and its misinformed religions and doctrines of the Western Christendom and Christianity is that Israel is threatened by people riding on camels with pea shooters. Yeah. And they've got nuclear bombs that can wipe an entire state off the face of the earth, an entire country off the face of the earth tomorrow. The modern Israeli government has nuclear capabilities to completely demolish Russia with one push of a button, if they dare. But you see, they're staying right in that area where they're picking on weak nations, stealing land from people, and then people here in the Western world with Christendom as its roots in Christianity, they throw that on the news. They throw that on the news and tell you that Israel's under attack, and that you should send them money or send your sons and daughters to enlist in the U.S. military so that they can be sent over to fight against natives being kicked off their soil and land. It's an outrage. It's sick and it's an outrage. It needs to be stopped. Who's going to stop them? Who's going to stop the Israeli government from doing what it's doing? Is anybody? I'll tell you, I told you before and I'll tell you again. Since the days when the Hellenization took place over in Israel, what it was during those times, when the Roman Greco armies invaded and smashed to pieces all the libraries and took up the scribes and Pharisees and those learned and elite of the northern tribe status in Israel, those same scoundrels that helped them rewrite religious history for the sake of peace and security, so that these Greco-Roman invaders could peacefully and securely steal away the lands, not only from what was left of the northern tribes in Israel, but also trying to steal the lands from the Arab, the native of the Middle East, and the Bedouin, the nomad of the Middle East. And so, tell me how that could possibly be a right type of action and fair. Since the time of Hellenization of Judaism and its original temples there, what was left of original temples, they brought in male temple prostitution, female temple prostitution, Hellenization, Greek gods, Zeus, Zeus, the son of Zeus, who they now call Jesus, erroneously, and worship as their Messiah and God, and equal to Zeus. They see Zeus as an equal to Zeus, his father, and teach the spirit of that as a trinity. But I'll tell you something. Something's got to give, and it's going to give soon. Israel cannot be allowed, the Israeli government cannot be allowed to continue to push its borders south. They must and will be resisted. Any foreign nation offering aid to Israel is guilty of the same crimes of modern genocide against a simple people who live in tents and have since their forefather Abraham. Furthermore, because of the unfairness and the conniving of these religions and these peoples that don't belong where they are, the original Arab and the nomads who lived just like the Bedouin were forced to invent Islam in order to defend themselves against foreign invaders as a religion for a province. But I can tell you that whether or not Islam lasts, whether or not Islam remains to be accepted in the Middle East, whether they are Islam or not, the Arab and the Bedouins are the blood descendants of Abraham and will inherit the Negev desert. It is their inheritance. That entire glorious land belongs to them. Now, I've said what I've said, and I mean every word of it. Stop it, Israel. Modern day Israel and Israeli government, stop. Stop your crimes against the natives of the Middle East. You have been warned.